But you now open.
Why are we changing maps?
I love the Hitman's Heatmaker. Not only was it my first range, specialized killstreak, professional killstreak, hail zone, and 10,000 kill sniper rifle, the Heatmaker is an interesting example of a weapon that has pretty basic surface level stats, but has a lot of complexity and room for new strategies that you can only get out of this rifle. It's safe to say that the Heatmaker is pretty underrated and underused compared to the other rifles, but does that come from weakness or from unfamiliarity? Let's find out. For starters, let's check out the stats. Similar to the Cleaner's Carbine, which I talked about in this video, the Heatmaker's weapon design centers around having a chargeable meter. Now, this isn't your stock sniper rifle's wait 2 seconds to do more damage charge meter. This is the focus meter, an external meter that fills by getting kills and assists, and it fills completely after getting 3 kills, 9 assists, or any combination of the two. Pressing the reload key, which is default R, will start to drain the focus meter regardless of whether it's fully charged, half charged, or a 9th charged, unlike the full meter requirement of the Cleaner's Carbine. You can compare these two weapons by thinking of the focus meter as a periodically available cooldown ability, rather than the crikey meter being a one-time kind of ultimate ability, but I digress. When the focus meter is active, you gain 25% faster damage charge time, the ability to remain scoped between shots, and Machina-esque tracer rounds on every shot. The focus meter is also capable of refilling while it is active, so getting kills in focus extends the amount of time you can stay in focus. To balance out the focus meter, the Heatmaker has one listed downside, a minus 20% body shot damage penalty. The Heatmaker has a few unlisted stats, those being it has the same silent sound effect as the Cleaner's Carbine, and it also has the hidden effect of decapitating enemies when you headshot kill them. The effect is purely visual, obviously, but it definitely adds insult to injury. And that wraps up the stats. Overall, it's pretty clear that Valve wanted the players to, believe it or not, focus on the focus meter, and grant the sniper a lot more power when the meter is active at the cost of weakening him overall. So with the stats in mind, let's dive in and see what the Heatmaker can do. Let's start with the downside, the body shot damage penalty. A minus 20% body shot damage penalty means that for all body shots, an uncharged shot will deal 40 damage, and a charged shot will deal 120 damage. It's safe to say that this is the main reason people do not use the Heatmaker, as losing a fifth of your body shot damage is detrimental and can make a big impact on the game. Killing light classes like medics and snipers with a fully charged body shot is no longer an option unless they've already taken damage, and tankier classes like soldiers and demos can shrug off a 120 damage shot much easier than a 150 one. Thankfully, damage to buildings is the same as stock, and if you want to be super technical, a headshot within 0.2 seconds after scoping will hit the target for 50 damage, but regardless, the Heatmaker is a weaker rifle in situations where body shots are a valuable tool. This is the reason why most of my sniper clips are using the stock sniper rifle. The option to opt for good body shot damage can make the difference between getting a kill and not getting a kill. Even though a 120 damage shot can still be devastating depending on the target's health for most sniper players, this is a big enough downside to outright avoid the weapon entirely. And if you stopped watching this video here, you'd probably leave with the opinion that the Heatmaker is far inferior because of the constant damage loss. What could the Heatmaker possibly do to make up for this? The answer? Focus. So what does the focus meter have to offer? If we do a brief recap of the stats, we see that activating focus instantly gives you a 25% faster charge speed, going from 2 seconds to 1.5. Focus meter also grants you the almost unique ability of firing without leaving your scope. And as a minor downside, the Heatmaker will fire team-colored tracer rounds when the meter is active. When you press reload to activate the focus meter, a few things happen. The focus meter plays a sound effect, causes sniper to say a voice response. It changes the focus meter color from white to red, and it puts critical spark particles on the weapon to indicate that the meter is active. Now, without focus, you're basically using a regular rifle with a body shot penalty, so getting kills to fill the meter up is a priority, preferably with headshots. Getting assist kills through rifle damage and durability is a slower but noteworthy option of gaining focus as well. And like I said earlier, you don't have to fully charge the meter to activate focus, which means if you get just one kill or just one assist, you now have some amount of focus available to you. So great, we have a bit of focus to play with. What does using it grant us? Speed. It's not like the focus meter gives Sniper a movement speed bonus or gives him a mobility tool, but what it does do is let us avoid a lot of downtime that Sniper typically has to deal with. In a game like TF2, anything that lets you do something faster, like sinking rockets to get more damage or using the Eureka effect to upgrade teleporters and get medals from spawn, it's inherently powerful. And the Hitman's Heatmaker grants you two unique ways that you can cut downtime as Sniper and be significantly faster than with the stock or other rifles. Number 1, repeating shots. When reading the stats, this is very obviously the intended use for the focus meter. You focus in and you're rewarded for staying in scope and focusing on a single area like a payload card or a choke point. The increased charge speed lets you build up damage more quickly, which helps when fighting tanky classes like an overhealed heavy or a soldier, and because the Heatmaker never has to unscope, it's able to charge between shots due to the normal 1.3 second charging delay not being applied while focus is on. These effects combined results in you being able to fire off a barrage of 225 damage shots, which is more than enough to deal massive damage to groups of enemies and take out any class that isn't being overhealed or under some kind of defensive buff. With the name of the game being speed, being able to do more damage in less time by not exiting scope and increasing charge speed lets the Heatmaker lock down an area with absolutely massive damage. So how should you go about using the focus meter this way? As I mentioned before, using focus on groups of players or common routes is the most effective way of utilizing your meter. If a point is being contested or a group of players are trying to push into an area, activate the focus meter and just start rattling off headshots. You're going to want to make sure you're aiming slowly and patiently to make the most of your shots, probably emphasize track aim to hit as many shots as possible. Don't be afraid of activating focus if you only have it partially charged, because any kills you get will extend your charge and continue your tracer flinging rampage. However, also be aware that the focus meter does not make you invincible, and that unscoping to check for spies and scan the battlefield for any threats is just as important as it is with any other sniper rifle. The tracer rounds in particular can be a good indicator for especially enemy snipers and spies that you've activated focus, so don't be afraid to burn some meter while repositioning in order to maintain your safety. While talking about the repeating shots, it'd be a crime to not mention the Heatmaker's power in man versus machine thanks to the focus meter. While I'm not an MVM expert, using the Heatmaker with explosive headshot, reload time, and ammo reserve upgrades is an extremely effective strategy and allows you to deal massive damage to both regular and boss robots alike. You definitely want to prioritize boss robots with medics on them. If you have fully upgraded explosive headshot, a single charged headshot on the boss will drop all of the medics, and then you can just shred the boss with the rest of your focus. Combining the Heatmaker with the tank shredding carbine bushwhacker combo can allow you to be a very valuable asset to your team. Anyways, that's enough MVM for me. Let's talk about focus strategy number 2. Increase defense against snipers and in close range fights. You're probably wondering, well, wait a minute, doesn't staying in scope make you worse in close range fights and make you easier to hit for enemy snipers? If the stats behaved exactly as they were listed, then yes, it'd be significantly worse. However, the focus meter has a hidden upside, the ability to unscope at any time. On its own, this doesn't sound particularly impactful, so let's lay down some groundwork to understand this better. If you have any time playing Sniper, you should know that Sniper's weakest point is when he just fired and has to stay scoped for a lengthy amount of time before he unscopes and reloads. You might also know that snipers used to avoid this downtime by jumping to cancel their scope, which helped avoid second scopes when fighting enemy snipers, but this was patched out several years ago. With the Hitman's Heatmaker, this unscoping delay can be completely negated by unscoping right after you fire, allowing you to jump, strafe, crouch away, and switch weapons at lightning speed compared to the other rifles. And thanks to the focus meter being able to be activated at any time, the Heatmaker changes from an area denial specialist to a monster head-to-head combat weapon. By shearing off a majority of your vulnerable time, Enemy snipers now have to either wait for the start of your scope animation and hit you basically within 0.2 seconds, or take the more difficult shot to hit you when you're moving at full speed. Or when in close range combat with a scout or maybe a spy, you're now a much harder class to track that can deal headshot damage relatively safely at any time because you can unscope after each shot. Using focus to help secure a difficult kill is an extremely valuable tool that not many players know about, and it requires additional effort to counter, which is important in a game like TF2 where every decision can have a big impact on how a fight plays out. Using focus in this way to mess up the enemy sniper can be just enough of a difference to tip the scales to my favor, and it's an advantage you can't get from any other rifle. And if I'm getting attacked by a scout or maybe a sticky jumping demo man, I can use focus and make me move much faster in between my shots, make me harder to track, and it makes hitting me much harder for both the demo and the scout, while making me much more likely to be able to hit my shots and win the exchange. So, now that we know how the Hitman's Heatmaker works, how does it compete with Sniper's other rifle options? Let's compare two unlocks to it, the Machina and the Bizarre Bargain. Starting with the Bizarre Bargain, the main comparison to be made between it and the Heatmaker is that they both have an emphasis on rewarding kills. However, they actually branch off significantly past the surface level observation. The Heatmaker and the focus meter gives you the same reward regardless of how many kills you have, while the Bizarre Bargain's head meter has a more gradient kind of scaling effect. This is to the Heatmaker's benefit as it doesn't have as large of a downside compared to the Bizarre's initial charge speed penalty, and it can be made use of much faster since the cap is effectively 1 kill compared to 6. In terms of damage, the Heatmaker is actually able to out-damage the Bizarre Bargain over time, with the Heatmaker doing 1500 damage over 10 seconds versus 1364 damage from the Bizarre with 6 heads over the same amount of time. It's worth noting here that this is sustained damage, not burst damage. The Bizarre with max heads will always win out on first shot damage, but subsequent shots will result in less damage over time compared to the Heatmaker. We could argue that the Heatmaker can technically do 450 damage with 2 shots in the time it takes to charge 1 max head Bizarre Bargain headshot, but that's not likely to be practical in-game. At the end of the day, there isn't a clear winner here for damage, as the weapons do better in some scenarios but lose in other, making them pretty situationally dependent. The Heatmaker may have the edge because of focus being faster to obtain, but it's still fairly even. With damage aside, if we want to go deeper into this analysis, we could say that both weapons share a trait of causing the user to approach the game differently. The Bizarre really only makes you adapt mentally compared to the Heatmaker making you adapt mentally and mechanically. We could talk about how the Bizarre's head is a passive effect compared to focus being a more active effect, and weigh the benefits of either. We could even bring up how the Bizarre does regular body shot damage, how the Heatmaker has a scope cancelling ability, or any of the other minute differences in these two sniper rifles that you can unlock in a free-to-play first-person shooter from 2007. But at the end of the day, it's pretty clear that despite seemingly sharing the same reward kills trait, they both go about it in different ways and are two unique weapons with noteworthy strengths that can help the player decide which rifle would be best in the given game state. Comparing the Hitman's Heatmaker to the Machina shows that there aren't as many similar traits as the Heatmaker and the Bizarre Bargain share, but there are still some comparisons to be made. For starters, both of these rifles emphasize a new role for Sniper, crowd control. The ability to shut down multiple players quickly can be very powerful, and both these items are capable of doing this in different ways. The Machina features a penetrating shot that is active whenever you reach full scope charge, and it will deal full damage to all enemies the shot intersects, even doing headshot damage where applicable. This makes the Machina a very scary, high damage and potentially high mortality weapon that thrives in choke points and corridors. Contrastly, the Hitman's Heatmaker's approach to crowd control is through the focus meter's permascoping ability, which, as we discussed earlier, lets you rattle off several high damage shots very fast, making it very dangerous against groups of players and high health targets. While the repeating shots only do about half the damage of a Machina shot, and they certainly aren't as flashy or exciting, the fact that you don't have to wait for enemy players to happen to be in line with each other means that there's far less room for error, and far more room for shutting down multiple players that are spread out over an area larger than, say, a hallway. So when deciding between the Machina and the Heatmaker, it's important to consider what type of terrain you're expecting to be sniping in, as it can make a big impact on which rifle is the better choice. If we compare damage of the two rifles, a very similar story plays out with the Machina winning out in burst damage, and the Heatmaker winning in sustained damage. It's worth noting that the Heatmaker body shot penalty becomes far more painful compared to the Machina's full charge damage bonus that allows it to deal 173 damage on body shot, but headshot damage is still fairly equal, as the difference between 450 and 518 damage headshots is unlikely to cause any impact in game. Like the Bizarre Bargain, you have to decide whether you value burst damage with a more regular rifle design, or sustained damage with benefits of the focus beater. Finally, the last comparison I want to make is with the tracer rounds. Short and sweet, the Machina always fires the tracers, while the Heatmaker fires tracers only when focus is active. While they may seem negligible, the tracer rounds are a very noticeable and easy to follow visual indicator for where you're positioned, and the ability to not always expose your location is a powerful one. And one last point is that the Machina can't no-scope, while the Heatmaker can no-scope, but you do still do the reduced 40 damage body shots when you do no-scope. After comparing the Heatmaker to both of these items, it's very clear that the Heatmaker sits comfortably in the middle of them, offering a little bit of everything in one weapon. It has the on-kill ability and quick charging of the Bizarre Bargain, and the crowd control and damage increase of the Machina. The Machina and the Bizarre Bargain offer a lot of burst damage for fighting single targets, while the Heatmaker offers more sustained damage, which is better suited for groups. It is clear to even a die-hard Heatmaker fan like myself that the Bizarre and the Machina both have clear advantages over the Heatmaker, but it's also just as apparent that the Heatmaker's strength comes from its on-the-fly playstyle switching, making it more of a jack-of-all-trades rifle than a more powerful but specialized one. And if you really want to get your conspiracy theories going, you can craft the Heatmaker by combining a Machina and a Bizarre. What? It's the same thing. You combine them and it's the best of both worlds. The Heatmaker is the best. Okay, yeah. So, should you try the Hitman's Heatmaker? Ignoring that I'm inclined to say yes to the Heatmaker specifically because I love it, I do believe that knowing when and how to use every weapon is important for any class main, sniper included. The Hitman's Heatmaker is the rifle for players that either A. want to get better at hitting headshots, B. want a rifle that lets them be versatile and unpredictable, or C. play man versus machine and want to be as effective as possible. For newer snipers, weaker body shots on the Heatmaker means that hitting headshots is more important than ever, and as such it makes a great headshot training weapon by forcing you to get the headshot damage to secure kills. For more experienced sniper players, the focus meter offers you two distinctive alternative playstyles that are available to you at almost any time at the press of a button: a defense-oriented damage dealer and a speedier sniper for dealing with immediate threats. So, if any of these things sound remotely interesting to you, or even if you're a bit skeptical and think that it can't be that good, go and give the Hitman's Heatmaker a try. It might become one of your favorite rifles. And for me personally, I'm always going to stick by the Heatmaker, not only because it was a gift from a friend while I'm still a free-to-play and I hold it near and dear to my heart for that reason, but because it lets me play sniper in a unique way that you don't see very often, and it lets me be the best player that I can possibly be. So in simple terms, I love the Hitman's Heatmaker. Thank you.